Leadership isn't theory. It's pressure. Responsibility. Decisions that matter. This is the Real Leadership Brief. Conversations with leaders shaped by experience. Tested under pressure. And accountable for the outcome.
Welcome to the Real Leadership Brief. I am your host, Dunn. Robert White has spent decades helping people push past the internal barriers that stop them from achieving big goals. A serial entrepreneur, executive mentor, and author of Living an Extraordinary Life, Robert has worked across Asia for more than 2 decades and trained thousands in high-impact programs. His journey has even landed him on the radar of Scientology and led to a ban in China for promoting human potential. With an early career in radio, he also knows exactly how to make a conversation come alive. Let's welcome Robert to the show.
How's it going, Robert?
It's great. It's great to be with you and your audience, Donald. I have a love for the military and for people that have served, and I understand that that's a pretty good portion of our audience today. So
yep.
I feel privileged.
I appreciate that. Well, why don't we dive into it? Robert, you've had a remarkable, diverse career. When someone asks what you do, what's your short answer today?
It depends if I'm sitting on an airplane or if I'm in an interview or, all the different ways that people ask. And right, one of the answers that I like a lot is that I'm an interruption. I work with leaders and their teams to interrupt patterns that might not be working for them, either personally or organizationally. So that's one way. I'm also a guy that's been there and done that. I'm looking at the positive here. Can you tell?
Yeah.
I took a company from startup to 300 people. I became the largest training company in Asia, the second largest in the world. And so I've had that entrepreneurial experience. I have failed big time and publicly. And by the way, that's the source of a lot of what I teach today is what I learned from that slap upside the head.
Yeah.
And so I'm very good at some things. I don't know anything about a lot of things, So
yeah. I think we look too much on the negative that comes from failure, and the reality is if you grasp a hold of it, there's a lot of positive that comes from failure. You learn the way not to do it. You learned how to do it the next time. You learned some things to improve, some things that you can just discard, get rid of the negative and take the positive from it and continue to move forward and learn. And I think that's the hardest way to look at it, but that's really the best way to look at it.
Well, I couldn't agree more. I'm often asked about, and I do some work on this, on mostly pro bono, on becoming an entrepreneur. And the short course on that, you can easily do 3 days. But the short course is, it's captured in a book that a friend of mine co-wrote called Just Start. Jump in.
Yep.
But the book is fantastic. You could kind of get a lot just from the title, right? It's called Don't Think Too Much. Be thoughtful to it, not too much. But after you start, do you learn from failure? Because what I've discovered is people get so stuck in their patterns and their belief system that they don't learn when they fail. And it's really unfortunate and common. But the people that succeed entrepreneurially are people that do rapid iterations and are constantly looking at, did it work or did it not work? If it works, do more of it. And if it doesn't work, goodbye.
Yep. Yeah. And that's, one of the best things that I think one of the best characteristics that an entrepreneur can have. I do like what you said too about just doing it. My first business was in the trucking industry. I owned a trucking company when I first got out of the military, and did good for 6 years. And then this thing called COVID came around, and my business just wasn't established enough to make it through. Made some bad business decisions. I changed what I was hauling. So the freight that I was hauling was infrastructure, and there was no infrastructure during the COVID times. And I didn't have the money to buy a different trailer and haul different types of freight and so forth. And so I ended up closing the company down. But I haven't given up, and I do now own another company. I own a media company called Barracks Media Incorporated, and I'm learning from those mistakes that I made from the first business, and I'm enjoying life. It's been a positive thing so far. The part that is challenging, right, is when you do first jump in, you're excited and scared at the same time.
Yep.
Would you say that that's one of the things that entrepreneurs struggle with to grow their company is that fear side of what's going on?
Well, the fear is, of course, made up, but it's been studied. It's not like it's a big secret.
Yeah.
And most of the time it's irrational. It's based on beliefs that you picked up when you were a lot younger, or some failure experience, and you don't want to repeat it. But, one of the things that I spent 6 years in China from 2014 to 2020, just before COVID, which put me out of business, by the way, in Asia. When you do group work and you can't do groups, that's the end of that.
Yeah.
But I learned a lot, and I had a great experience, and just amazing cultural experience and business experience. And one of the things I did that was different was I did more public speaking. Now, I'm a severe introvert, so can I put on my dancing monkey show and get on stage and do something pretty good? Yes, I'll acknowledge that. But in China, I got a lot more demand than I had ever received, and I was enjoying it. So I was in front of more than 20,000 people, over that time. And one of the things I learned is that I could measure. Now, this is self-evaluation, so it's suspect, right? Okay. I may be a tremendous liar here, but I could be in front of 2,000 or 3,000 people, but like a true introvert, I can't wait to go back to the hotel room, order room service, and watch soccer on ESPN2. I don't go out to dinner with the guys and that kind of thing, the true introvert behavior. But I do review myself, and I take a look at what was my energy, for that 45 minutes or that hour and a half. What was my energy? Again, self-rated. And what I learned, one of the things I learned was, if I was really nervous before I hit the stage, I almost always was at my best. If I wasn't nervous, one of my friends uses the expression, you could have phoned it in,
Yeah.
If I wasn't nervous, I was flat, because that nervousness is, I think, sourced in a desire to do well, to do it the best you can do it, whatever that is. And if you're feeling that, I think that it releases a kind of, I would say, God-given energy, or it's the moon or the stars. I don't know what it is, but it's an energy that works. And to not do something because you're afraid of it, that's just hanging on to some old picture of yourself and saying, well, I can't do this, I'll fail. Well, I'm not the only one to say that. It's within failure that most of the really great lessons are learned. Yeah. It is, again, I was born in West Virginia. It's a very West Virginia expression. It is that slap upside the head that gets your attention and says, there's some changes you need to make, boy.
Yeah.
And you better get about it. Get on that one.
Yeah, you are absolutely right. And I do agree with you that, the moment you don't have that fear, you become complacent. That fear is what keeps you on your toes and keeps that fight or flight going, so your decision making process and everything's working at its height. But you have to embrace it.
Yes.
If you let it take over, well, then it becomes a negative, and that's really where the trick is managing that dance back and forth with it. And I think that's true for a lot of things. That's true in the veteran community. That's true in professional sports and anything else. Everybody that is in front of that stage and having to perform at the top level is going to have that same fear. At least I would hope so. So what are some of the most common mental or emotional barriers that people run into? What would you say that some of these things that we were starting to talk about that stops people from pushing forward, the beliefs that they picked up from a kid or from when they were younger?
Wow. A lot of what I do in working with executives and teams is to tell a story, sometimes from my own life. And I'll share two that have direct application to learning. The first one is that after 20 years of building my business, hugely successful, and all during the 20 years, people said, you should write a book about this work. And it was experiential learning. You're learning by doing. And so I had a ready excuse, which was, you can't create an experience in a book. I've later learned that's just flat out not true.
Yeah.
However, that's what I used as an excuse. I might have just been lazy. It's a lot of work to write a book.
It's a lot of work.
Yep. And deeper than that is the point of my story, which is, requires a therapist and a couch to fully understand. But here goes. So I finally get shamed into writing the book.
Okay.
By the late Stephen Covey. And, I competed with him in a seminar setting and won, but I held him as the absolute best because he had sold 25 million copies of a book and mine had not sold 25 million or even close to that. So, and there's some ego and some male jealousy and stuff like that.
Right.
But I finally wrote the book and I was really nervous. And I knew that, again, being the supreme introvert, extreme introvert, that I'd have to get out in public. Otherwise, I would have a warehouse full of books. And a book is a very public thing. You're sharing what's real for you, right? And
Yep.
I knew that at some level. But so the book gets published, and I send a copy to a bunch of people from our industry, some people I really respect. People like Ken Blanchard, the author of 1 Minute Manager and the creator of situational leadership. I mean, a genius thought leader in our field. And Jimmy Colano, he and a partner created the company Career Track, which was at one point the largest seller of one-day seminars in the world, and a client of mine and a good friend of mine. And so I was nervous, and I would present the books, and then the phone starts ringing and people are raving about the book and saying really nice things. And they're ordering copies for their friends or for their staff and relatives. And, it just felt terrific for about 18 seconds. And then I started realizing that a number of them were saying some version of, I was disappointed in one thing. So, of course, I would ask what? And with my heart in my throat, hoping they're not too severe on me. And they would say, well, we thought the book would be about you and your extraordinary life. And I said, no. The book is about our graduates. And, there's 1,400,000 now graduates of the companies that I founded and led, these high impact experiential learning events, 4 to 5 days long. So it's not like I didn't have course material or book material. So the book is about them, the issues they brought into the training and how it interacted with our material, what they learned from it. Now, I think if a book would have been about me, maybe it would have sold 20 copies to my relatives and close friends, and I probably would have ended up giving those away. So, no, the book is about real life experience and what we can learn from that.
Yeah.
What I didn't share with people is there was one chapter about me. It didn't say so in the book. And it's only in recent years, last 2 or 3 years, that I've talked about this. And one of the things that I think, drives behavior, you hinted at in introducing this idea, which is things start when we're younger. And when we pick up beliefs, we have beliefs about marriage, beliefs about strength, beliefs about money, beliefs about failure, about success. We don't have to think through some things to know how to answer a question or to be in a conversation, because we've got this underlying programming called beliefs. So in the section of the book that talks about beliefs and their impact on people, on our graduates, there's one subchapter that's titled something like the most limiting belief of all. That's a pretty bold assertion, right? That out of all of our beliefs, which one is the most limiting? And what it goes on to say, that belief is, I am not enough. So when you're talking about finding that job, becoming an entrepreneur, maybe getting married, or creating an intimate relationship, about ending a friendship, all these decisions we make in life, if they are based in I am not enough, that decision is not going to turn out well. Yeah. And I know, I've done a little therapy and a lot of these trainings and a lot of deep thought and meditation and long walks. And so I kind of know something about where that came from in me. I had a mother. My dad died when I was 14. My family moved back to the South, back to West Virginia. And I stayed in Green Bay, Wisconsin, where I had essentially grown up. And I lived with another family. And in high school, there were 300 students in my graduating class in Green Bay East High School. And I was number 6 academically. Not bad, right?
Yeah.
I also, at that time, had the highest rated top 40 radio show in the state of Wisconsin.
Wow.
I mean, the audience in those days for radio was me and my friends. I knew how to talk to them. Yeah. And I knew the music they wanted to hear, so yep. That's also how you become elected by those 300 or 299 as most likely to succeed and as the commencement speaker. So everything's going great for me, right?
Yep.
So I telephone my mother. And in those days, no free phone calls. They were expensive, right?
Yeah.
The old Bell system days.
Yep.
And I wanted to brag a little, right? So to give you a hint of what my first 17 years with my mother was like, it's captured in one sentence. She said, "Why weren't you number 1?"
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Now, the reason I wasn't number 1, and by the way, I was given the inside scoop that what prevented me was I got 1 C in 4 years.
Wow. Guess
what the subject was, Donald?
What's that?
Public speaking. I was the number 1 public speaker in the school. I could get in front of thousands on that microphone, but I could not stand up in front of 30 people, my peers, and speak. And if I look at where that came from, it came from a lifetime of being told, you are not enough. So if you've bought that story that you're not enough, I don't have enough education, I'm not smart enough, I'm not disciplined enough, I fail at everything I do, which is always an exaggeration, but some people get to that place, or I'm afraid that I'll fail and people will laugh at me or whatever. It's just stuff we make up. And if we do the work on moving through that and taking the negative energy off those beliefs and start really looking at which of my beliefs serve me and which are dysfunctional. Because once you're aware of them and do a little letting go process. That might be through therapy. That might be through a long conversation with a dear friend. It might come from reading a book or watching a video. I don't care where it comes from. It's needed work on the personal level. So that's the first story about letting go of something that's in your way, which is almost always belief system sourced. The other one is, after that great beginning to my life, what was behind it was a life of poverty and abuse. And what you learn from that is you're not enough.
Yeah.
You're not enough to deserve your parents' love, whatever you make up about that. And that was me. So after graduating from high school, I went to college for one semester. And in my finals, at the end of that first semester, had my first of 3 heart attacks. And had another one at 21 and one at 23. So 19, 21, and 23. I had daily chest pain after that and was told I would not live past 35. It was inoperable and incurable.
Wow.
And so at 27 years old, I was doing my best to make my classmates wrong about naming me most likely to succeed. I had the 3 heart attacks. I had the daily chest pain and lied about it. I had married and divorced and felt horribly guilty about it. Didn't know how to handle that at all and didn't talk to anybody about it. Another secret that I carried. And finally, I had a little sales business that was failing. And a friend who was in a similar business, a good friend, went out to California, did one of the early human potential movement trainings called Mind Dynamics, and came back and was raving about it and said I should go. And I said, no, for 6 months. And in the 6 months, I watched his life change for the better. And, I saw his business improve, go up when mine's struggling. I saw his marriage work go from almost a divorce to everything that I dreamed of in a marriage. And this guy had something I'd never even heard of before, which is adult onset acne. Those pimples you get when you're 13 or 14, right?
Yeah.
I didn't realize you can get it as an adult, and it's really serious. It doesn't go away.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah. And if you see a person that has a badly damaged face, they might be spending a lot of time in the corner bar, that's possible. But more often it's this adult onset acne or some cousin to it. And I watched that, and he had done all these exotic treatments, like steroids injections into his face. And he had a abrasion once, turned his whole face to look like one of those monkeys in the zoo with the red butt, and he's a salesman, so it really bothered him. Those 6 months. And then he brought the training to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where by then I was living in the big city or the bigger city. And so I went through the training with arms crossed, legs crossed, eyes crossed, negative, cynical. This isn't going to help me. And my life changed for the better. I mean, not the first hour or even the first day, week, or month, but I tripled my income that first year and went up 10 times the following year. I started making more money per month than I made I made it more in a month than I did in a year. And it was just amazing. Oh, and the chest pain stopped.
Wow.
I can pass an EKG now, unless it's one of those total ones, where you get on the stress test deal.
Yeah.
Then they can see the damage that it did. But I can get insurance without being rated. Wow. So right. Things turned out great because I took the risk of taking a look at me. In that training, they didn't say one word about money or business. All they focused on was me and how I was wired and the choices that I could make. And around what I later named a company for this, around awareness, responsibility, and communication. That I've got to wake up. It's got to start developing a higher state of noticing myself, my world, the people in my world, everything. I needed to take personal responsibility instead of dropping into the cultural vat, which is victimhood. And then finally, I needed to be a better communicator in writing, in speaking, in listening, in body language, in every way that we communicate. So anyway, that's my story. I'm sticking to it. And, that experience led to my enrolling a lot of people in Mind Dynamics and contributing to their success and mine. And then having the founder and chairman of Mind Dynamics, the late Alexander Everett, telephone me. I didn't even know his name. I knew nothing about Mind Dynamics, except it was good for me. And it was a little bit, what's the expression? Wah, wah, woo, woo.
Yep.
I grew up a little too conservatively for that, right?
Yeah.
But it was strange in a way, and at least in my experience. And he called me and to say thank you for enrolling over 400 people into his training, or his Milwaukee and New York City instructors training. And, was just a very nice man and invited me out to California to meet him. And he sent me a ticket, my first time to fly first class. And 10 days later, I was president of Mind Dynamics. So wow. For 4 years, I ran the business of Mind Dynamics. He handled the content of the training of trainers, and being the face of the business. He was a charismatic, bombastic, brilliant public speaker. And he broke down doors for us with that ability to get people excited about being more of themselves. Getting back to that excitement you normally feel at 3, 4, 5 years old. And I took care of the operations of the business, and which included starting 7 foreign subsidiaries, primarily in Europe, but also in Australia. And one place I said no to was Japan. Really? I went there for a week. It was, first of all, the most expensive market at that time for our kind of work, because we require space. Yeah. If you're going to do trainings, you require space. And secondly, the language was backwards. The European languages are all Romanic in source, and they're similar in many ways. And Alexander's work depended on language, a very precise use of words. And so I saw that problem. And then we were busy, and we were in overwhelm. So I said no. And after the ownership of Mind Dynamics changed and it didn't work for me, I quit. And I started a company called LifeSpring, and with a few people from Mind Dynamics and some other people that I had grown to know a bit and admired. And 6 months later, I sold LifeSpring. That's a long story. Maybe we'll do another podcast on that one. But it no longer worked for me. I was increasingly clear of what I was supposed to be doing with my life. Yeah. And kind of struggling with that, but getting more clear. So I quit, and I realized I had put every penny that I had into LifeSpring. It was 100% self-funded. And we were in 3 cities, and we were starting to do some things, but we were still cash negative. So I sold it to the staff. And that's a famous line, nothing down and forever to pay. And by the way, it took longer than forever to pay, but they eventually did pay me. But now I'm broke. I've got a new family. I've got a mortgage and no money, and I'm kind of unhirable and unemployable, I think is the actual word. And the people from Japan over that was about 3.5 years since I had been there. They reached out to me every month for 3.5 years. I'd never experienced a culture that did follow-up like they do. Wow. And they kept saying, you've got to come, and you've got to bring this program to the Japanese staff and all that stuff. And I said no for lots of reasons along the way. And now I'm broke and I'm unemployed, and they send me a new offer. Come for 90 days, set up a program, and you can leave. We'll pay you for 1 year.
Wow.
Good offer, huh?
Yeah.
I was on the next airplane.
I would have been too.
And my 90 days turned into the first time 12 years. I've now lived abroad in Asia for 23 years of my working life, and I've traveled there for 50 years. So it's been a big part of my life. And we built that business and a lot of success. But one of the learnings from it came from that experience with LifeSpring. Now, it turned out great. They went on to have 17 training centers in the U.S., huge success. They served hundreds of thousands of people. I'm so proud of having been involved in my small way. And I'm even more proud of the people that led it and the people that participated in it on the staff and on the graduates. And, it was just a huge success. But at the time, for me, it was a failure. And what I learned from that was that when I was with Mindedemics or with my sales organization, what I didn't realize, what I was unconscious about, was I was creating a culture. And when I went to LifeSpring, I didn't create a culture. It already existed. And Alexander created it, and he nurtured it, and he enforced it. If I came to him with a new marketing idea, I felt like I should, like he's the boss. He's a terrible boss, but, I should run things by him, right?
Yeah.
So I'd go to him and I'd explain my idea. He only ever asked me one thing: would it serve our graduates? That's all.
Yeah.
Some version of that. If I enthusiastically said yes and could explain how it did it, he said, well, do it. Go to it. Go for it. If I was hesitant, if I started telling some kind of a marketing story to him, he'd say, maybe you should rethink that. And what I learned was that there were 3 aspects of culture that I didn't even have names for. And that's your purpose. Like, why do you exist as a company?
Yeah.
And I'm going to get around to the personal side here in a moment. And then secondly, what's your vision? What's a dream so big that it attracts people to it, that it engages people? And then finally, what are your values? What is it that you will take a stand for? And, I look at I have in my full siblings, I have 2 younger brothers, younger sister. They all served. My brother and sister in the Army, my other brother in the Navy. And I tried to get into the Air Force, and the doctor laughed at me. He said, are you here trying to get into the military so you can get a lifelong disability check? That was after he examined my knee, and he was right. But anyway, it gives me a good story, I guess. But I have this tremendous admiration for people that have served. And I've got a friend who does a lot of work on identity for service people, to have them, realize that they're worth something.
Yeah.
And what I see with many in the military is that they don't realize how whatever identity they have that might include I am not enough or some other dysfunctional belief, it gets overcome by the value that gets taught beginning on day 1 of basic training, from my understanding, which is you matter. And I'm wearing I did this on purpose. I don't know if you can see it.
Yep. You matter.
You matter. In the military, they let you know you don't matter and you matter, big time. You are here to serve this great country. And put your bullshit aside. You and your teammates are going to do something good in the world. It's needed. It's wanted. We will pay you a little bit for it. And the reason I mentioned that is that if your values are clear and strong enough and positive enough, they will take you through a whole lot of doubt. And that's one of the many things that the military does in terms of their recruiting, their training, and then their management, the way that they handle leadership. Not all of them, they're not perfect, and a lot of bad stuff happens.
Yeah.
But boy, when you listen to some of the stories that Medal of Honor winners tell, it's about taking care of that guy next to you.
Yep.
Hey, Donald, do you remember that book, Everything I Needed to Know? I Learned It in Kindergarten.
I do. Yeah.
How to play well with others, how to clean up your messes, all those things.
Yep.
Those are all values.
Yeah.
And in the military, you learn take care of the guy next to you, right? Because he's going to take care of you.
Yeah.
That's how that game works.
That's the biggest part of it is being part of that team. I think that's one of the reasons why the veterans struggle when they leave, because they
don't
lose
have
the
team.
Yep.
They don't have the team. And there now are some structures so you can get back together in a way with your team. And I'm so grateful to people that do that, that bring military people together.
Yeah.
The former president, George Bush, does his bicycle trips. That's what it looks like. It's just a bicycle trip. No. And we all know George Bush is no therapist. He might have a lot of skills, but that ain't one of them.
Yeah.
But just bringing them together in a common goal, a common pursuit. They're back with their team. There's all kinds of examples like that I love. Anyway, I kind of talked on an organizational level, but personally, I think what's lacking for many people that are a bit adrift,
mm-hmm.
I think that's a pretty powerful word to describe some people's lives, is to do some work on why are you here?
Yeah.
I had a participant in an executive seminar about 2 years ago named Arjun Sen. Arjun is Arjun, Sen, S-E-N. He's actually written a really interesting book, and I highly recommend it. But one of the things I learned from Arjun while he was a student in my seminar was that he says, you are one of one. Now think about the depth of that simple statement. You are one of one. You're the only person out of now approaching 8 billion people with the same fingerprint.
Yeah.
But you're also the only one of 8 billion people that has all of your unique qualities, your strengths, your weaknesses, your abilities that you've developed, your look. I mean, they talk about doppelganger, the person that looks like you. Well, even those people that look like you, even twins, are different in small ways, Yeah. And you're one of one. So find out why you're here. If you lean toward being religious or are fully religious, then you ask the question, what gift did God give me that I need to express? That's big. It's purpose. So you become purpose driven. And, but if you're not religious, just ask yourself, I'm one of one. Why am I here? What do I have to contribute? So we do a lot of work in our corporate trainings and our personal growth trainings on becoming more clear about your purpose. I mean, I had a very clear purpose when I was 6, 7, 8 years old. It was a negative purpose, so it had some downside to it. But I decided that I will never be poor again. I grew up that way. I went to school in handmade clothing made out of feed sacks, with little flowers on it. You imagine how you get teased with that? First, you're poor, and everybody now knows it. And secondly, you're wearing girls' clothing, right? Yep. But that sense of purpose lasted until I was in my 40s. I'll never be poor again. That's what drove me to accomplishment after accomplishment after accomplishment.
Yeah.
To $1 million a month in income. I did all that stuff. I semi-retired at 46. I moved to Aspen, Colorado. I built a 14,500 square foot home, bought a jet, had 5 personal staff, 6 nonprofit boards as a director, traveled the world in 47 countries now. Traveled for 6 months with the late John Denver, presenting a seminar on creating a sustainable future. I mean, my life was fantastic. And I was still waking up in the morning saying, I wonder what God has in mind for me because I'm not satisfied.
Yeah.
That led to my current statement of purpose. But I also, by that time I had changed my purpose, which is hard to admit. My new purpose was I'm just a rich guy in Aspen. And I did a lot of good from that, and I broke a lot of barriers and a lot of critical self-beliefs by what I was able to accomplish with a combination of a willingness to risk and a little bit of money. You can break down a lot of walls that way. But the beginning of that is to get what your purpose is. And that was my journey. And that's what led me here to you and what you're doing, because I can tell you have you can swear to this, Donald. I didn't ask you what's your purpose, but I knew what it was because I listened to your podcast.
Yeah.
So I know what your life's about. I know what you did with your failure.
Yeah.
And this is what I did with mine. So, and that is, I mean, we teach a whole lot about purpose, but the first thing I recommend to people is purpose. The next one is to get clear about what's the world you want to create for you, your family. And it might be very simple.
Yeah.
But do that. I'll share a quick story. I only did one seminar the last 5 years of that company. I had 70 full-time trainers, and about 2/3 of them were better than me, frankly. But I did one seminar a year. It was on legacy, and it was for our graduates. And these were presidents and vice presidents of companies to figure out, okay, you did all this, you're making the big bucks. What's next for you? What's your legacy? What do you want to leave behind? And as part of that program, we had handouts each evening. Oh, we did it in Aspen. And, big time people love to come to Aspen. So it was like a marketing device. And I didn't have to leave. I could sleep in my own bed. So we had a handout each night. And they came in the next morning to discuss the handout. And one of the handouts is called The Dancing Toll Taker. And this was about a guy back in the days when on the Golden Gate Bridge, there were 10 toll takers, 10 gates going into the city, none going out, if you only paid once.
Yep.
And so they stand in this little booth and it's $2, then $3. I don't know what it is now. Last time I checked, it was $7. So this guy, his vision, he identified his purpose, which was around his family and taking care and having a healthy family. He was a relatively younger Black guy. And this was a job working for the state where the bridge and whatever tunnel association, whatever that was called, but it was the state of California. And so he had a steady job to take care of his family. Now he looks at his vision. His vision is to be a dancer, to be the backup dancer for some YouTube video, whatever. And so he goes to his boss and he says, is it okay if I buy a Zoom box and put it in my booth? And the boss goes, I don't care, that kind of boss.
Yeah.
Just do your job, show up every day, and you can have a boombox. So he gets the boombox, and then he starts dancing in the booth, 8 hours a day, every day. Every day. So if you looked at it from above, what you would see in the morning is 10 booths, each one with 9 of them would have 5 or 6 or 7 cars waiting for their turn in line, and one would have 25. The dancing toll taker.
Wow.
Because he was so excited to be pursuing his vision for himself, his family, for his friends, to maybe overcome those voices that said, you are not enough.
Yeah.
I don't know what motivated him, but I do know that what his vision was to be a dancer, and he was actualizing it by dancing in that little booth and having such a big smile, such a positive attitude that these people who you get up, you have your cup of coffee, you kiss the wife and kids maybe, or the husband and kids, and you go get in line. well, the shortest line is best, right? Well, not if the dancing toll taker is going to take your money.
Yeah.
He's going to inject something positive into you in that moment. And then finally, the final thing is, you've got your purpose, you've got your vision, and what are your values? So the work that you do, the books that you read, the seminars you go to, the conversations you have, my tip for your listeners and is one that has worked for me. Pay attention to your purpose, your vision, and your values.
Yeah. Yeah. I think purpose is the big thing right there. I can speak for myself. When I left the military, I kind of, without realizing it, felt like I left my identity and my purpose behind. And that was one of the problems that I had to get back when I became a civilian, was my purpose. And then, to get a purpose back, you have to have some positivity with you. And those two things was a real challenge for myself. It took years to get through that. When I was listening to you talk, I kept thinking of this colonel that I was talking to. He had this saying, and I don't know if he made it up or if he got it from somebody else, but he asked me, he said, do you know what my main desire, my main purpose to get promoted is? And I said, no. And he said, it's because there's people above me that deserve to be fired. And the only way I can do that is by getting promoted. And I was like, wow,
Clear.
it was absolutely clear. And I thought about that, and I was like, well, I could take that as, he just hated the guys above him, or I could take that as his way of saying the only way I can make changes is, instead of bitching about it, is by getting into the position to be able to make those changes and
to get better at what he does and have people notice.
Yeah. And I think, I think that's really what he meant, because that's exactly what he did. He was an amazing colonel, an amazing leader, and I never have a bad thing to say about him. And so for him to say that and then walk those steps and actually prove it, and by making our unit better, said a lot. And I think that's because he was driven. He knew his purpose and what he wanted to do. And I think that's where a lot of that came from. So I agree with you 100%. Purpose and identity are big. And without those two things, none of the other stuff is going to matter, because you've already handicapped yourself.
We adopt that identity thing as something I've really worked on for myself and with others. And it's a shortcut. I mean, knowing who you are, right?
Yeah. Or
at least might not be who you really are, but it's something you adopted, some act, that, for me, it's the dancing monkey show when I'm in front of a crowd. Even though I'm an introvert, I can show up and have some fun and be animated and engage people. Yeah. But that idea of, we have the identity because it works for us. If there's an area where it's not working, that's where some personal growth can appear. There's some parts of how I show up are not engaging people, or not bringing the results that I want. So maybe I need to stretch. Maybe I need to take some risks. And Donald, I have this gift that I give whenever I appear, and it's free and puts us into relationship, which is my not hidden desire with it. But what it is it's the 8 principles that we learned actually from successful graduates, and explaining where it came from, how it works. There's a little self-test to tell you what you need to focus on next. And they can get that at extraordinarypeople.com. It's free. To get it, you sign up for my weekly e-zine, which is called An Extraordinary Minute, which is an idea that I'm working on, or that I'm realizing is powerful. And it can be read in 1 minute or less. So 1 minute a week, you get something positive and hopefully life affirming. Every once in a while, it could change your life. But included with that is this 28-page mini book that is about the 8 principles. So it's free. I encourage your readers to go to extraordinarypeople.com. I've got one more story, but I think we're out of time. But a story about values and trucking. So
let's go for it. We'll make the time. Go ahead and give us
sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm in the training business big time, but I have been to more than 50 outside trainings. Now, some purely for me, but most of them because it's my industry. I want to know what's going on. I've only walked out of 3. I'm very proud of that. I found there's value even in some not so good trainings. There's still some value, except for 3 of them. And they gave me a good story, so that's worthwhile. So I'm in a training with 99 other CEOs, sponsored by an organization called EST. It's now called Landmark, and for many years, it's been Landmark Education. So their advanced training for CEOs, I attended. And I paid a lot of money. I flew across the Pacific round trip and stayed in a, kind of expensive condominium to do it, and got a lot of value. But the biggest value, I have to say, was I met 4 lifetime friends. I made 4 friends that are my friends for a lifetime. One of them is struggling with his health right now, so I'm praying for him. But his name is Matthew Molich. And Matt Molich was the son of a trucker, a trucking company that was doing about $7 million a year. Wow. When he died suddenly and kind of young. Matt had become an attorney. He had never worked as a trucker in any capacity, never worked in his dad's company, not even on vacations. And he's a budding young lawyer with his white shirt and tie and suit and all that. And his dad dies, and now he's got the company. So 5 years later, the company is doing $85 million, and it's on the cover of Dunn's Review.
Wow.
And they did it with purpose, vision, and values, not with a guy that knew anything about the trucking business, because he didn't.
Yeah.
And one of their values is number 8 on my list of 8 principles. And I've often said that if you were going to only practice one of the 8, it would be commitment, because it'll cover the other 7 in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So one of their values was commitment. And the way he grew the company was he focused on a niche. The only thing he did was they did hauling for Broadway shows, rock and roll acts, plays, corporate shows, those product shows and things like that. And, when I traveled with the late John Denver for 6 months, one of the things I learned, because we would do our little show about creating a sustainable environment one night, and he would do a concert, his own personal concert, the night before or the night after. And that way we could afford the jets, and other stuff. Yeah. So I saw a lot of his concerts, by the way. And but one of the things I learned about is load in and load out, that these venues have very narrow windows when you can load all those instruments and lasers and all that stuff in, and you got to get out on time. So that kind of market, if you got a truckload of shampoo and something happens and you're 3 days late, so what? Right? It might a little bit of an irritation for whoever's managing that inventory, but it's not a bad thing, not a horrible thing.
Right.
If you're late for load in, it's big. So his promise was, we will keep our word. That's it. Yeah. We'll do whatever is necessary to keep our word. So a guy's driving in the Southwest in Arizona, and he's out in the desert, and his tractor blows up. I don't know what went wrong with it. That isn't part of the story, I know. But he gets it towed to a truck stop and a repair facility. And they said, this requires a part that we can't get for 5 days. It was a Swedish truck. I don't know trucks, but it was a Swedish truck. I remember that part. And that would mean he'd miss his commitment for load in. So what I didn't know, and I know you know, is that in those truck stops, I don't know about today, but at least at that time, you didn't turn your truck off.
Right.
It idled, right?
Yep.
So he was living the value of commitment. So he went to a different tractor and trailer and disconnected them and stole the tractor, took it over and hooked it up to his trailer and drove to his destination on time.
Wow.
And then he drove to the police station and turned himself in for truck theft. And spent overnight. He spent overnight in jail. So he's in court the next morning in front of the judge. The judge says, "You have a perfect driving record. You've never been charged with anything. You've got the cleanest record that's ever been in front of me. Why did you do this?" And so he explained the value. Pretty soon the judge is laughing. The whole courtroom is laughing. They fined him, or the company paid it. The company had to pay all the expenses of, juggling those tractors back and forth.
Yeah.
And they sent him home. No jail time. Values matter.
Yeah.
And he lived that value on his job. And I think of that every time I do watch one of those Medal of Honor winner ceremonies. I think of it every time I see a company explode in size in terms of growth. I know what's behind it. Its purpose, its vision, and values. And when I see an individual start really becoming the gift that they are, and getting that they're enough, and they start doing great things in their family, great things in their job, great things in their community, great things if they've got a little company that starts getting big. What I know is behind that is they've done some work on themselves. They've done what I did back then at 27, which is I got myself out of the way. And I realized people wanted what I had to offer, and I was driving them away from me, not toward me.
Yeah.
Because of old stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, that's an amazing story. You talk about dedication. That it don't get no more dedicated than taking another truck's rig and hooking up and still making that load. That's pretty impressive.
When I've gotten to know Matt deeply. We've done some things together that I think are worthwhile. But when he told me that story, it was like unbelievable. And then, oh my goodness, this is a life lesson. This is not just a story, man. Yeah. This is real world, real people.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Robert, if you don't mind, can you share again, where is it that people can pick up your newsletter and your book? What was the website again?
extraordinarypeople.com, extraordinarypeople.com. And if you sign up for that weekly e-zine, it's easy to unsubscribe if it gets to be clutter for your inbox. And also, if you reply or comment, I answer every email. So, because that's kind of my real purpose is relationship and contribution. By the way, that's a hint as to my current purpose. Is contribution. So
absolutely. Well, I will make sure that we get the links down there in the bottom. I challenge everybody, if you are an entrepreneur or you're looking to improve, reach out and take a look and I've learned a lot just from this last hour that we've been talking. So I can only imagine the good stuff that you've got out there. I'd like to go and check it out and get the 8 principles too. It's got me curious what the other 7 are. So absolutely. I hope all of you guys.
I have a very bright young adult daughter named Megan who says, "Dad, you're just a book salesman." So I will mention this.
Okay.
My book's available on Amazon and all those platforms, Living an Extraordinary Life. If you want a signed copy, get it on my website, and I'll sign it for you. So, living an extraordinary life.
Absolutely. And if any of you guys buy the book, when you get done reading it, make sure you go and leave a review as well. Can't say it enough. It is extremely important. It helps every author out there. It's one of the few things that we have control over with our algorithms anymore. So make sure you leave that review. It definitely helps. So,
thank you, Donald.
Absolutely. I appreciate all of you guys that listen and give us that most valuable asset that you own, your time. I thank you guys. Y'all take care, be safe, and we will catch y'all next episode.
You've been listening to The Real Leadership Brief, a podcast from the Barracks Media Network. Thanks to our guest for sharing their experience, and thank you for listening. You can find more conversations like this across the Barracks Media Network. We'll see you next time.